Most climbers who die on 8,000-meter peaks don't die on the way up. They die after they've already won. After they've touched the summit, taken the photo, and proven they could do it. Roughly 80% of high-altitude deaths happen on descent. The summit is only halfway, and the return is where bodies fail. The reason is brutal and simple. By the time you turn around, your body has burned every reserve it had. Your legs barely respond. Your hands can't grip a rope. Your brain, starved of oxygen, makes mistakes a child wouldn't make. And the mountain, which gave you just enough mercy to let you reach the top, stops being forgiving on the way down. We're ranking the 5 deadliest descents in mountaineering. Not the hardest climbs, not the most dangerous summits. The descents. The routes where exhaustion, time, and the mountain-specific dangers combine to kill climbers who've already proven they had the skill to get there. This is why the way down is where most of them don't come back. The descent kills because it exploits 3 failures that happen simultaneously. And once all 3 hit at the same time, even elite climbers with flawless technique die. The first failure is physiological. Your body is done. At 8,000 meters, you're operating in the death zone, where the human body cannot sustain itself. Every step burns energy you don't have. Every breath delivers oxygen your blood can't process. By the summit, you've been climbing for 12, 15, sometimes 20 hours. Your glycogen stores are empty. Your muscles are cannibalizing themselves for fuel. And on the descent, when you need motor skills to down climb steep ice or clip into fixed ropes, your hands shake. Your legs buckle. You make simple, fatal errors because your body has nothing left. The second failure is psychological. Summit fever has a hangover. The entire climb, your brain was locked on one goal: reach the top. That focus kept you sharp. It kept you cautious. But the moment you touch the summit, that focus collapses. You relax. You think the hard part is over. And that psychological letdown is when mistakes happen. You forget to clip a carabiner. You take a shortcut across unstable snow. You stop checking the weather. The summit is a psychological trap. It makes you think you've won when the mountain hasn't let you go yet. The third failure is time. Most climbers who die on descent summited too late. They pushed past safe turnaround times because they were so close, and now they're descending in darkness, or in a storm, or in conditions that are deteriorating by the hour. The death zone doesn't care that you summited. Every minute you stay above 8,000 meters, your body is dying. And if you're descending in the dark, exhausted with weather closing in, the margin for error disappears completely. These 3 failures don't just add up, they multiply. Exhaustion makes you slow. Being slow means you're still high when the weather turns. Bad weather means you can't see the route. And when you can't see, you make mistakes. And mistakes at 8,000 meters are fatal. The mountains we're ranking represent specific descent dangers. Each one kills in a different way. And each one proves that the summit is not the achievement. Getting down alive is. Rank 5. Dhaulagiri. The Wind Trap. Dhaulagiri stands at 8,167 meters in the Nepalese Himalayas. It's the 7th highest peak in the world. And it's earned a reputation for one specific descent danger that's harder to predict than avalanches, harder to fight than technical terrain, and impossible to escape once it hits: wind. The mountain sits in a position that funnels jet stream winds directly across its upper slopes. And those winds don't build gradually, they shift. One moment, you're descending in manageable conditions. The next, 100-mile-per-hour gusts are tearing at your body, ripping gear from your hands, and turning every step into a fight to stay upright. The wind on Dhaulagiri doesn't just slow you down, it stops you. And if you're exhausted, moving slow, and caught on an exposed ridge when the wind hits, you're not getting off that mountain. The 1969 American expedition was the first to summit Dhaulagiri. 5 climbers reached the top. On the descent, the wind turned. It came out of nowhere. 2 of them made it down. The other 3 were caught high on the ridge when the gusts hit. They couldn't move forward. They couldn't descend. They were pinned in place, burning energy just to stay standing until their bodies gave out. The wind didn't knock them off the mountain. It held them there until they died. The physiological reality is this: Exhaustion means you can't move fast. And on Dhaulagiri, speed is survival. The weather windows are short. The wind shifts are unpredictable. If you summit late, or if you're descending slower than planned because your legs are done, you're still high when the wind turns. And once it does, you're trapped. The technical detail that makes this descent uniquely deadly is the exposure. Dhaulagiri's upper ridges offer zero shelter. There are no rock outcrops to hide behind, no couloirs to drop into. You're on a knife-edge ridge with nothing but air on both sides. When the wind hits, there's nowhere to go. You either push through it, or you die where you stand. The fatality rate on Dhaulagiri sits around 16%. That's lower than Annapurna or K2. But the deaths that happen here follow a pattern. Climbers summit in good conditions. They start descending, and then the wind shifts. Suddenly, they're fighting gusts that make it impossible to clip ropes, impossible to navigate, impossible to do anything but try not to get blown off the ridge. And the ones who are too slow, too tired, or too high when it happens don't make it. The wind on Dhaulagiri is unpredictable. You can check the forecast. You can time your summit push for a weather window, but the mountain sits in a position where conditions can change in minutes. And when they do, the descent turns into a survival test that has nothing to do with skill. It's about whether your body has enough left to move fast enough to get below the wind before it kills you. Dhaulagiri proves that descent dangers aren't always about technical difficulty or objective hazards you can see. Sometimes the mountain kills you with something you can't fight. And if you're exhausted, slow, and caught in the open when the wind turns, all the experience in the world won't save you. Rank 4. Nanga Parbat, the Endless Ridge. Nanga Parbat stands at 8,126 meters in Pakistan. It's the 9th highest peak in the world, and it earned the nickname Killer Mountain long before most people knew what the death zone was. The fatality rate sits around 20%. But what makes Nanga Parbat's descent uniquely deadly isn't a single technical obstacle or an objective hazard you can point to on a map. It's the psychological endurance failure that happens when climbers realize how far they still have to go. The Mazzino Ridge is the longest ridge on any 8,000-meter peak. It stretches for miles, and the descent doesn't just require technical skill. It requires focus, precision, and mental sharpness for hour after hour after hour. The problem is that by the time you summit, your brain is done. You've been in the death zone for 15, 20 hours. You're hypoxic, you're exhausted, and now you're staring at a descent that demands constant attention on terrain where a single mistake kills you. The 2012 tragedy is the definitive case study. A team summited Nanga Parbat via the Mazzino Ridge. They reached the top, they turned around, and then the descent broke them. The ridge is exposed. It's technical, and it's long. So long that even climbers in perfect condition would find it demanding. But these climbers weren't in perfect condition. They were destroyed, and as they descended, the realization of how much terrain was still ahead of them shattered their focus. The mental trap works like this. On the way up, you're climbing toward a goal. Every step gets you closer. Your brain can process that. But on the way down, especially on a route this long, every step just reveals more ridge, more exposure, more technical sections, and your exhausted brain starts to break. You stop concentrating. You stop checking your footing. You take shortcuts. And on the Mazzino Ridge, shortcuts kill. The technical detail is that the ridge demands constant precision. It's not a steep couloir where you can rappel in stages. It's not a fixed rope descent where you clip in and follow the line. It's a ridge line where you're down climbing, traversing, and navigating complex terrain for hours. And every single move requires judgment. Where to place your foot, which hold to trust, when to clip in, when to move fast. And if your brain is too tired to make those calls correctly, you die. The fatality pattern on Nanga Parbat is simple mistakes late in the descent. Climbers who made it to the summit, climbers who had the skill to navigate the technical sections on the way up. And then, on the way down, they fall. They slip on easy terrain. They miss a clip. They take one wrong step on a section they'd climbed flawlessly hours earlier. The mountain didn't get harder. Their brains just couldn't maintain focus for the endless descent. The 2012 team lost climbers who were experienced, skilled, and strong. They didn't die because they lacked ability. They died because the ridge is so long and their minds were so depleted that they couldn't sustain the mental sharpness required to descend it safely. One of them fell on a section that wasn't technically difficult. Another made a clipping error. Simple mistakes. Fatal consequences. Nanga Parbat's descent proves that the mountain doesn't have to hit you with an avalanche or a serac fall to kill you. It just has to be long enough and demanding enough that your exhausted brain can't hold focus for the entire journey down. And when that focus breaks, even the best climbers in the world make mistakes they'd never make on a normal day. The Mazenot Ridge doesn't forgive those mistakes. And that's why Nanga Parbat earned its nickname on the descent, not the climb. Rank 3. Mount Everest, the traffic jam of death. Mount Everest stands at 8,848 meters. It's the highest point on Earth, and it kills more climbers on descent than any other mountain in raw numbers. Not because the technical climbing is the hardest, not because the objective hazards are the worst, but because Everest has created a descent problem that doesn't exist anywhere else in mountaineering. Overcrowding in the death zone combined with physiological collapse in climbers who should never have been there in the first place. The specific descent danger on Everest is the bottleneck effect. Hundreds of climbers push for the summit on the same day, using the same route, clipping into the same fixed ropes. And when they all turn around at the same time, the descent turns into a traffic jam at 8,000 meters. Climbers wait in line. They stand still, burning oxygen, burning energy, and burning time. And while they wait, their bodies are shutting down. The 1996 disaster is the definitive case study. 8 climbers died. Most of them died on descent. And the pattern was identical across every death. They summited too late. They got caught in traffic on the way down. And by the time they reached the difficult sections, their bodies had nothing left. Rob Hall summited at 2:00 p.m., hours past the turnaround time. On the descent, he encountered Doug Hansen, a client who was struggling. Hall stayed with him. They moved slowly, and as they descended, they hit the traffic. Climbers coming up, climbers going down. Everyone clipped to the same fixed ropes, waiting for their turn to move. Hall and Hansen burned hours waiting, and by the time they reached the south summit, Hansen couldn't continue. Hall stayed with him. They both died just below the summit, not because they didn't know how to descend, but because the traffic and the late summit had left them with no energy and no time. The physiological reality is this. After you summit Everest, your body is done. You've been climbing for 12 to 18 hours. You've been in the death zone for most of that time. And now, on the descent, you need to clip and unclip carabiners, navigate fixed ropes, and down climb steep sections. But your hands don't work anymore. Your fingers are numb. Your motor skills are gone. And when you're standing in line, waiting for the climber ahead of you to move, you're not resting. You're dying. The psychological factor is summit fever. Everest is the ultimate goal for most climbers. It's the mountain everyone knows. And that creates a psychological trap where climbers push past safe turnaround times because they're so close. They ignore the 2:00 p.m. rule. They ignore their guides. They ignore their own exhaustion. And when they finally turn around, they're already too late. The commercial expedition trap makes this worse. Most climbers on Everest are paying clients. They've spent $50,000 to $100,000 for a guided climb, and they're depending on Sherpas and Western guides to get them up and down. But on descent, when the client is exhausted and the traffic is backed up, the guides are exhausted too. They're trying to manage multiple clients, all of whom are struggling, all of whom need help clipping ropes and navigating obstacles. And when everyone is depleted at the same time, people die. The 2019 season saw 11 deaths. Photos from that year show a line of climbers stretching from the Hillary Step to the South Summit, a conga line in the death zone. Climbers waiting for hours to descend a single section of fixed rope. And while they waited, their oxygen ran out. Their energy ran out, and by the time they reached the lower camps, they were so destroyed that simple tasks became impossible. Everest's descent is a logistical nightmare that turns exhaustion into death. The mountain isn't technically harder than K2 or Annapurna, but the crowds, the late summits, and the commercial pressures create a descent environment where even strong climbers die because they're stuck in traffic while their bodies shut down. And that's why Everest, despite being the most climbed 8,000-meter peak, still kills more people on the way down than almost any other mountain in the world. Rank 2. Annapurna I, the Avalanche Gauntlet. Annapurna I stands at 8,091 meters in Nepal. It's the 10th highest peak in the world, and it has the highest fatality rate of any 8,000-meter mountain. Roughly 32% of climbers who summit Annapurna don't come back. That's 1 in 3. And the reason isn't technical difficulty. It's not weather, it's avalanches. And specifically, it's avalanches that hit during descent. When climbers are exhausted, moving slowly, and descending directly into zones where the snowpack is destabilizing by the hour. The specific descent danger on Annapurna is the time trap in its most lethal form. Most climbers summit in the late morning or early afternoon, and that means they're descending in the afternoon when the sun has been warming the slopes for hours. The snowpack that was stable at dawn is now primed to move, and the descent route crosses multiple avalanche paths with no safe alternative. You're not climbing around the danger, you're descending straight through it. The historical pattern is clear. The majority of Annapurna deaths occur in avalanches during descent, not on the way up. On the way down, climbers reach the summit, they turn around, and as they descend, the mountain moves. Sometimes it's a small slide that knocks them off the route. Sometimes it's a massive slab avalanche that buries entire teams. But the pattern is always the same. They summited too late, they descended too slowly, and the snow released while they were still in the kill zone. The 2014 disaster killed 39 people on the Annapurna circuit trek, but the pattern holds on the peak itself. In October 2014, a team summited Annapurna Way and began descending in the afternoon. The weather was clear, the route was visible, but as they crossed below a serac band, the snow released. The avalanche swept 3 climbers off the mountain. 1 survived, 2 didn't. They weren't caught in a storm. They weren't lost. They were simply in the wrong place when the afternoon warmth destabilized the slope. The technical detail that makes this descent uniquely deadly is that the route offers no options. On some mountains, you can choose your descent path. You can avoid certain slopes. You can wait for conditions to improve. On Annapurna, the standard route descends directly through avalanche terrain. You cross under seracs. You traverse slopes that are loaded with snow, and there's no alternate way down. You either move through it fast, or you're there when it releases. The objective hazard reality is brutal. Skill and experience mean nothing when the mountain decides to move. You can be the best technical climber in the world. You can read snow conditions perfectly, but if you're descending through an avalanche path in the afternoon and the slope releases, you don't survive because you're good. You survive because you got lucky. And on Annapurna, most climbers don't get lucky. The psychological torture of descending Annapurna is that climbers know they're in the kill zone. They can see the seracs above them. They can hear the mountain creaking. They know the snow is warming, but they have no choice but to continue. There's no shelter. There's no place to wait it out. The only way off the mountain is through the avalanche paths. And every step, they're wondering if this is the moment the slope lets go. The fatality rate of 32% is driven almost entirely by descent phase avalanches. Climbers who had the skill to reach the summit, climbers who navigated the technical sections on the way up, and then on the way down, the mountain moved. And when an avalanche hits at 7,500 meters, when you're exhausted, clipped to a fixed rope, and there's nowhere to run, you don't fight it. You just disappear. Annapurna proves that the deadliest mountains aren't always the ones with the hardest climbing. Sometimes they're the ones where the descent path forces you through objective hazards you can't control. And when you're tired, slow, and descending in the afternoon heat, those hazards don't wait for you to get clear. They just release. And that's why Annapurna kills 1 in 3 climbers who reach the top. Rank 1, K2. The Bottleneck and the Serac-K2 stands at 8,611 meters on the Pakistan-China border. It's the 2nd highest peak in the world, and it has the single most dangerous descent obstacle in mountaineering, the Bottleneck. a narrow, steep couloir of ice that sits directly beneath a massive hanging serac. The serac is the size of a house. It's unstable, and it can collapse without warning, sweeping the entire descent route in seconds. This is the deadliest descent in the world because it combines three factors that don't exist together anywhere else. First, the technical difficulty. The bottleneck is near vertical ice. You're not walking down, you're down climbing or rappelling on exhausted legs with numb hands. Second, the exposure. One mistake and you fall 2,000 meters. There's no margin. And third, the serac. It hangs directly above the route, and when it collapses, everyone in the bottleneck dies. The 2008 tragedy is the definitive proof. 11 climbers died in a single day. Most of them died during descent through the bottleneck. The day started clear, multiple teams summited, and as they began descending, the serac collapsed. It didn't just fall, it exploded. Tons of ice swept the couloir, severing fixed ropes and killing climbers who were clipped in, waiting their turn to descend. The ones who survived the initial collapse were stranded above the bottleneck with no ropes, no route, and no way down in the dark. The technical reality is this. Exhausted climbers must downclimb or rappel a near vertical ice slope while their bodies are failing. Your crampons need to bite into hard ice with every step. Your hands need to manage the rope, the rappel device, and your balance simultaneously. And if you're so tired that your crampon catches on your pant leg or your hand slips on the rope, you fall. And at that angle, on that terrain, a fall is fatal. The serac threat is what makes K2's descent uniquely deadly. On other mountains, you can see avalanche, danger, you can assess snowpack, you can make decisions. But the serac on K2 is a random execution. It can collapse in perfect weather. It can collapse when the route is empty or when it's crowded. There's no pattern, no warning. You're either in the bottleneck when it lets go, or you're not. The physiological failure compounds everything. By the time you reach the bottleneck on descent, you've been climbing for 18 to 24 hours. You've summited the second highest mountain on Earth. And now you need to perform technical downclimbing that would be challenging on a normal day. But your legs are shaking, your vision is blurred, your hands can barely grip the rope, and one crampon error, one rappel mistake, one moment where your exhausted brain doesn't process the terrain correctly, and you're gone. The time trap is brutal on K2. Most climbers summit in the late afternoon, and that means they're descending the bottleneck in darkness. You can't see the ice, you can't see the route. You're navigating by headlamp, trying to find the fixed ropes, trying to clip in correctly, trying not to make a mistake. And in the dark, mistakes are inevitable. K2's fatality rate sits around 25%, and the deaths are heavily weighted toward descent. Elite climbers with perfect technique die in the bottleneck because the margin for error is zero. You can be the best mountaineer in the world, but if your crampon slips, or the serac collapses, or you're too exhausted to clip the rope correctly, you die. And that's why K2's descent is the deadliest in mountaineering. It's not just hard, it's a technical test with lethal consequences, performed in the dark, under a hanging guillotine, by climbers whose bodies have nothing left. The summit is the beginning of the real test, not the end. The single deadliest factor across every mountain is exhaustion. It strips away the skill and judgment that got climbers to the top. And on the way down, when the body fails and the mind stops working, the mountain stops being forgiving. Which descent would you never attempt? Subscribe for more high-altitude reality.